Welcome into the Energy Tech Podcast presented by OpSite Energy. I'm your host, Jeff Perry, along with co-host Mike Flores, and today we're talking AI productivity tools for business in the energy sector. Welcome in, Mr. Mike Flores.
Hey, Jeff, how's it going? Glad to be here at the Energy Tech Podcast here at OpSite Energy and the OpSite Energy Control Room. So it's good to be here. Again, shooting from Cannonsburg, Pennsylvania.
Yep.
Heart of the Appalachia, I guess. So good to be here.
Cold weather, cold winter day here in Cannonsburg. Little cold fronts coming through right now.
Yeah.
It's one of those days where you go to work at like 40 degrees and you go home and it's 15 degrees.
Yeah,
So,
and I think you're being nice about it. Yeah. You know, I'm from good old South Texas, so just not comfortable with the weather. Even though I'm a little overweight, man, it still hits you. So,
yeah. Well, today, Mike, we brought you on because you are what I consider the world's foremost expert. No, I'm just kidding, but very, very well-versed in AI productivity tools. And Mike is one of the guys that if you ever need to know or want to know what the latest is, because he's tested it, he's been through it, he lives, eats, sleeps, breathes this stuff, guys. He always tells me, I don't fish, I don't hunt. This is what I do for fun. So it just happens to be what he does for a living too. So today we're talking about productivity tools that you can use for your business. You don't have to be in energy, but a lot of these will focus on how we use and apply them in the energy space. So why don't you kick us off, Mike, and tell us maybe your journey to AI and where, how you developed the skill set and where do you go to find this information? Like, where can a newbie, just joining the podcast who knows nothing about this, just knows that it's a buzzword and things like that. Like, where do they start?
Yeah, sure. Well, let's see. I've been doing this. I've been in the business for almost 20 years, I would say. I've been in I would say the technology space. I started mostly on the IT side of the business and then working in control rooms in water, wastewater, energy, oil and gas. And then I spent my time working with systems integrators, as both a team member and partner with some system integrators. One is, of course, OpSite's partner, IDM. And so that's kind of the place I've been, and I've been in industrial automation and controls, and also spent time in the IT, OT, information technology, and the operational technology side of any business. And again, it's been in those same verticals in manufacturing, water, wastewater, energy, oil, and gas. I originally started in water, wastewater many years ago. It's been quite a while, since pre 9/11. I'll say that. So I always use that as a marker.
Before I was born.
Yeah, pre 9/11. So it's been that long. And originally, what happened was I started in IT, and I joined a control room for hire company, which is one of our competitors that's still in business today. And they asked me, "Hey, you're an IT guy. Do you want to learn SCADA, which is the supervisory control and data acquisition?" And I said, "Okay." Next thing you know, I was on a plane to California, and I was learning to work with Schneider Electric products, and then started in Wonderware. So I was working in both Clear SCADA, which is now the GeoSCADA product line. Both are owned by Schneider Electric and Wonderware as well. And basically, the company was like, "Hey, we need somebody that can just manage the SCADA system, integrate it, work with us." I started there, and then I moved into working with another systems integrator and trained under some great folks, on the things that are typical. These could be meters, skids, specialty skids, compressors, any type of packages for measurement, and all your different flavors of equipment. And then eventually I made my way in working with some producers that you and I have worked with, and systems integrators. And so that's kind of where I spent my time. I think moving into what we call artificial intelligence was just kind of, for me, it's just been an interest. My background is, I do have a degree in information technology and a master's in cybersecurity, and I maintain an expertise in machine learning and which is a subset of artificial intelligence. And really what that is just being good at math and realizing where you can apply some of those techniques. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But so my journey started there on the technology side of that, operations, combining the two and realizing in both IT and OT, there's a way you can do that. So then you start seeing the advent of artificial intelligence. A lot of people, when they think of AI, they tend to relegate that or associate that with large language models, like GPT, if you will.
Right.
Okay. So they may look at these trainings, a GPT model, and people have some exposure. Surprisingly, this was a study based on Bain in last year. Only 12% of people actually weighed or have used a GPT or a large language model. The majority of folks have not. So there's a huge swath of people that don't even try to use a large language model. But what they don't realize is that AI is still maybe has found its way into their business. It's found a way into their daily lives. So it's everywhere. So there's a huge swath of folks that don't. For me, it just was a natural pickup. I started looking at artificial intelligence. I spent time on platforms like Azure and AWS and GCP, and have worked in some of the AWS products for machine learning, the data science side of Snowflake, as well as Azure. Spent time in those platforms just understanding what they can deliver in terms of artificial intelligence. So that's been my journey. The other part of it is, like you said earlier, is I don't own a boat. I don't go fishing. I don't go hunting. I don't paint. But guess what? I'm in there working with Make.com, N8N, Replit agents. I'm working with agents on the weekends. I'll spend a Sunday spinning up something that might work in your business. I do have the team at IDM where we're working together to develop processes leveraging artificial intelligence. Whenever I talk about it, Todd, I know he's on the booth right now, and maybe he can attest.
Hey, everyone.
Welcome in, Todd.
Yeah. So let me do that too.
Hey.
Todd's here with us.
Hey, Mike, you did some good jobs, or you did a great job of explaining what SCADA meant. What's this IDM thing I keep hearing about?
Here we go. Shameless plug for Todd again.
There we go. IDM is, of course, Industrial Data Management. It's one of the partners of OpSite Energy and has been around since 2008. And IDM is a systems integrator, well-versed in connecting the dots for your business. There you go. Look at that.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that easy. Yeah.
And I'm not using AI to say that. So that's my neural network in my brain saying that, Todd. But, I've worked with Todd as well on the IDM, with the IDM team. And I think anyone can attest that I'm constantly sending out tools, tips, tricks, links, messages, just centered around the advent of AI. I think it's going to be a huge part of our lives, regardless of in any form, education, business, travel, industrial automation, just about anywhere it's going to impact us. So it's just, I don't know, it's just something I do on the daily. My wife thinks I'm a little crazy, and I'm sure when she's listening to this, she's going to attest to that fact that, if everyone else is sitting on the toilet, doom scrolling, and I'm checking out the latest in artificial intelligence. My wife calls it SCADA porn,
Well, Mike, you said something that is interesting. So you said that 12%, I don't know if this is worldwide, I'm assuming probably more like U.S. population, has used what you consider to be a large language model, something like ChatGPT. And for me, going back just even a couple years, maybe 3, but 2 to 3 years, when Chat kind of hit the scene, a lot of people were worried about using Chat in business applications because they didn't know, down the road how things would mature. Does Chat own this data? Let's say you work for a large firm, a large insurance carrier, and you're using Chat to do daily things. The sentiment that I got from some of these folks in large corporations was like, hey, we can't use Chat because we don't know who owns this or in legality and all that. I think we're well past that now. I mean, there's Chat's one of many, many, many large language models that are easy or cheap to access. But for me, being a consultant over the last couple of years, leaving, the corporate life, chat for me was like the ultimate fake it till you make it tool. Like, hey, if 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 someone came to me and said, hey, can you do X? And I'd be like, well, let me get back to you. Typically, I would go to something like chat to see, hey, do I have the tools and the resources to do something? You know, you got to know a little bit about what you're doing for sure,
Sure.
at least the subject, and then have some expertise there. But utilizing these productivity tools, even just something as simple as Chat GPT, has really changed. It changed my approach as a consultant to say, yeah, I can go handle that. Like I don't need 5 people behind me to do that, because what used to take me, 5 days, I can do in, an hour.
Right.
So really interesting chat. Of course, one of the ones that I use the most. But you mentioned 3 or 4 there, just
Sure.
kind of spouted off. But like, as far as what are those applications? I mean, you're not. I'm not going to say they're buzzwords. They're just names of applications, right? Like, and it seems like a new one every day, right? So like
Sure.
DeepSeek is out a couple weeks ago, and
Sure.
this one does this, and this one's better for this. I listened to you and Todd talk about this last night. Even like, ChatGPT is good for some things, but it's like really, really bad for other things, right?
Sure.
So can you see, how do you pick the right product for the right thing? Is that something we get into later? Like,
Well, I think everyone has their brand, I guess you could say. It's like anything else. Everyone wants a market share. OpenAI's ChatGPT, OpenAI inside of ChatGPT as well, aside from launching, it's 4.5. They've got mini models that they've leveraged. Deep learning is now a capability in ChatGPT. That is OpenAI. And then you've got other competitors. You've got Grok, Elon Musk's Grok, and Grok 3, and all of its releases. You've got DeepSeek, which is another product. You've got the folks over at DeepMind, which is Google, Gemini. So you've got Gemini. Part of that is DeepMind. Then you've got Anthropic, which is Claude. So you've got some definite players in the area. I think one of the things I like is that there is competition. There is the ability. Let's not forget Meta. So Meta is also a big piece in that. There's other what I call smaller players. Apple does the same thing. Samsung does the same thing.
O365, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah. You've got the advent of Azure. Azure's got its semblance of large language models. I mean, I love the competition. Are there some great for others? Sure. One of the things we've done, and these are not plugs for any one product. Just know, like, recently using Claude 3.5 and the new 3.7. If we wanted to build just a quick user interface for a mobile application, you can drop something inside of Claude for a really pretty looking user interface to generate an idea that you otherwise couldn't generate. It might take you several days. You can do it in about an hour. You've got models inside of ChatGPT that are great for deep research. Now you've got the advent of Perplexity. Perplexity is one of the newer ones where you're aggregating more than one model to do something.
Right.
So
Hey, Mike, this is Todd back here from the booth. One of the things Jeff mentioned is a lot of people had some resistance to AI, mostly because they didn't necessarily know where their data lived or who owned that.
Sure.
And maybe you could talk a little bit about the offline modeling capabilities that are really out there on the market already.
Yeah, I think that's the first thing. If you're in a corporate environment, you'll always have I call them Dr. Zerg. It's the IT team. When they care about security, it's a thing. If you go to the internet and you pay $20 a month, guess what? At the end of the day, that data may not be yours. It's out there.
Now, you sign that agreement or check that box at
You
the
did.
bottom, they're gonna use that data for something.
They are, and it's going to
Potentially,
train,
yeah.
and it's going to train what's already happening. So that good, bad, or indifferent, that's what happens. However, in lots of cases, you can take a model and you can have it learn, and you can do that offline. So you can take a large language model, you can take that capability and bring it inside of your environment, and no one has access to that. It's your corporate environment. I'll go as far as to say that you can deploy that in your industrial OT space as a closed model that you can learn from.
Yeah, and that's
And-
exactly what we're doing with some of the OpSite energy.
Yeah.
So
That checks the box. I get it that there's lots of, and naturally so. There's fear. There's thoughts that data could leak. People are human. But at the end of the day, if you and I are willing to accept the risk when we get on a plane, there's a risk that we're willing to accept if we want to leverage products for productivity and ensure that we still follow a lot of the same cybersecurity steps.
Yeah. So what I'd like to do here, Mike, maybe, I know we always kind of take a step back after you spend some time, but I'm trying to advocate for the newbies, so to speak, and I
Sure.
consider myself somewhat there, at least compared to you. But when there's a lot of buzzwords, machine learning, AI. Can you kind of break down
Yeah.
what's what, and just explain the verbiage around what is machine learning, what is a language model, what is AI, how do those all play together?
Yeah.
Like, can you give us an education in 3 or 4 minutes that says, hey, here's the words you're seeing on LinkedIn, here's what you're seeing on press releases, here's et cetera. What does it mean? Like, how does it all tie together?
Sure.
And then maybe after that we can spend some time diving into like Grok 3.5 or 3.0, like some use cases in the industry for some of these applications. But,
Sure.
as far as what do all these things mean? How do they all tie together? What is the verbiage? What are the buzzwords? Like, how do we make sense of this stuff?
Yeah, sure. So the best way I can do it is there's an onion image. I call it the onion image. And I shared it with Todd. If he puts it on here, that's great. If not, you'll see it in post-production anyway. But typically what you have is you have this umbrella. There it is, an umbrella of artificial intelligence. And then you have these subsets that people talk about. So inside of artificial intelligence is where you're going to pick up things like natural language processing, which is taking your natural language, the way you talk, and when you go to a large language model and you say, give me a table or write me a query in SQL that will take the following table and do X. Well, I'm going to run a natural language process to do that. I'm doing it in a natural language for you easily, but in the background, it's running, so it creates that SQL query, right? So that is where you may say the large language model formulation lives inside of artificial intelligence. However, I want to caution that or step back from that statement and say that there's additionally lots of deep learning and neural networks that come in with that later. So again, just sticking to the image, you've got that artificial intelligence, and then you've got things that are fall into it like intelligent robots. The new word now is AI agents, is one that we'll probably wind up talking about here today maybe. And they fall in artificial intelligence. And then you have a subset area. And these subset areas, one of them, which is machine learning, is one of the most attainable and reachable areas. Because here, what you're doing is you're looking at different modeling of data in machine learning to learn something. Now, keep in mind that in machine learning, it's already taking information that's fed to a machine. So it can only work with what you give it, right? So that's the best way to
And
think
Mike,
of it.
would you say that machine learning is probably where our industrial applications mostly will leverage the data?
Yeah, they can. So early on, they can do this. So if I work as in an industrial space, I may want to take my data and create a linear or logistical regression for pipeline data to look for leaks. Or to, let's say I'm delivering gas every day and I'm sending it out to a market. Well, I might use linear and logistical regression to understand the time series data to give me a better idea if I'm going to be able to deliver my gas, right? The other one that you might see is what's called k-means clustering or k nearest neighbor. That is a technique you can use for downhole optimization or production in wells. The others are what you see like support vector machine, decision trees that are used. So each one of these models is used to determine an outcome. That's the best way you can do it. What can I predict with that machine learning model? At the end of the day, that's really what you're doing is you're establishing the prediction. The subset below that, Jeff, or not even or around that, is called neural networks. That one's a little more complicated. This is when we start wanting to mimic reasoning and behavior, right?
Right.
So Now, if we move into neural networks, this is what your brain is doing in order to predict a behavior as the result and then generate an outcome. So that's what neural networks, and then you've got deep learning. So deep learning is also a more intimate subset of artificial intelligence. And so in some applications, there's a combination of all this going on that you're going to see in larger applications. So an example is the U.S. military may leverage each one of these layers in order to fly a vehicle remotely. They may use this for an unmanned aerial vehicle. Each one of these artificial intelligence implements may be used for something as simple as a driverless vehicle. Eventually, I think, and I predict that in our industry, in energy, you may see this happen to wholesale do the work of an operator, or do the same thing for a plant, right?
And let me ask you this, Mike, and it maybe Todd can bring back up the onion image there. He may be having some difficulties back there, it looks like. But when we're talking about these little applications like chat, I know there's ways to train and do AI agents and stuff inside of there. But like something like chat, Grok, Gemini, where do they fit into this onion model? And I'm assuming some of them they encompass all of these. But even if they encompass all of them, they may not do all of them very well.
Right.
So in the context of your onion diagram, like something like chat, like where does it live in this diagram, and where does it do things well, and where does it do things not so well?
Well, a lot of it has to do, Jeff, with training. And so it's just like anything else. Think of the analogy I like to give is if you're a boxer, you may win a fight because your trainer is Mickey from Rocky.
Yep.
But you may not win because your trainer is the guy that fought Mike Tyson. What was his name?
Buster Douglas?
No, the other guy. No,
George Foreman was
the Vegas guy, the entertainer. Anyway, recently.
Yeah, Jake Paul.
Yeah, Jake Paul.
Sorry.
So who knows? The analogy I'm drawing here is simply that, training models is not always the same. Training them is not the same. So you might have differentiators. There's other things in the background that determine how well a model can learn, and a lot of that has to do with training. And so where it falls in the subset is right there at artificial intelligence, natural language processing.
I
and then
tend to
machine
think
learning.
it depends on the application as well. So if you're in the office, doing spreadsheets and things like that, and you're tasked with some sort of analysis, you can definitely use the natural language process. Drag and drop something in a chat and naturally say, please analyze this data and look for patterns with high temperatures or whatever.
You don't have to say please, Todd, by the way.
Yeah.
It doesn't recognize
it doesn't have
nicety,
feelings.
So, yeah.
It doesn't have feelings. But that's actually one of the points I always talk about when I'm trying to train individuals is really you should speak naturally, because that's in part the way it learns. If you try to talk to it like a robot, your results are not going to be as meaningful as if you just naturally say, hey, please do, okay, I won't use the word please anymore, but hey, chat, find patterns of high temperatures.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And the other thing, too, is we call that prompt engineering. So when you're writing a prompt inside of a large language model, that's called prompt engineering. And so, large language models, they're a specialized subset of AI, that's kind of an intersection between the natural language processing and deep learning. So when you go back to that onion model, if you go look, it's right at that intersect where you see the bottom there of machine learning moving into deep learning.
And if we keep it at the high level, and we're talking about natural language processing, you said something that's important to me. So it's learning how to prompt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll be with my kids or whoever, just a coworker, and it's like, hey, we need to do a Google search, right? And I watch how they search for it, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, that's not going to get you the results. It's like,
right.
How you prompt this has a lot to do with the outputs, right?
Yes.
So, like, how do you get good at prompting? I know there's some, I know like probably a year and a half, 2 years ago, you sent me a spreadsheet with 1,000+ AI prompts, right?
Sure.
Like, if you're trying to do this, ask it this way. But like, is that something you just pick up by working with the tool for a year or, several months? Or is it like, is there a way to prompt this thing based on how it's built? Is that just
Well,
something you pick up?
heck, Jeff, you could even ask it how to prompt it.
Yeah. What's the best way to prompt you?
Yeah, I think the best answer I can give you, Jeff, is the first one in the foundational techniques is context. Okay, let me explain.
Context,
Let me
okay.
explain. When I say context in a large language model, you come at it saying, act as if you are a 20-year energy, oil and gas pumper
Mm-hmm.
who's worked in the production field, and you've got this level of experience. So you start by giving it context first. Then after you give it a clear kind of a detailed instruction about a desired output, you gave it context first, then a desired output of what you want, and then you give it definers. Definers are, in quotations, I want to do X, to the outcome to be X. And then after that, you're going to lead with instructions. First, next. So there is a way to prompt in a way that's going to give you exactly what that gives you a pretty good deal.
I think the subtle point there is, you can tell the AI machine to act as a CEO or whatever hat you want it to wear, and that will definitely give you much, much better results.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Well, that's good to know.
exactly. And that's on the large language model side, right? So again, it's a cross between that natural language processing there and touching some deep learning, okay, to help you out. Remember, it's only going to give it's predicting, it's leading to a prediction. So it's not discovering anything new. It does a level of reasoning inside of deep learning, but ultimately it's going to give you a prediction based on what you're asking it. So
yeah, that's why if you use the chat environments frequently, you'll start to notice that it gives you answers based on your previous conversations. It's not relearning that; it's predicting, as Mike's pointing out, what you want the outcome to be based on your conversation.
Sure,
and that's why context, I think, is one of the subtle but very powerful hints you could give, like a pro tip you could give to a user, because you can just start typing in anything into a chat environment.
So going back to the onion model, would you say that almost every model out there, large language model, encompasses every layer here?
They can. So there's advanced techniques. If we're just talking about using the typical interface of the large language model on your machine, then you're only touching the natural language processing and some deep learning, combined with a tad bit of some of the machine learning that has its capability. When you start introducing an AI agent, now you're stepping into each part of those onions right there. Each part of the onion.
When you say AI agent, for anyone on the I know what that means, but like, explain to me, what is an AI agent? This is relatively new in the space, right? I mean, call it 3 or 4 months really before it's been like mainstream. But like, I've programmed agents to do alarm rationalization, and previous to having an agent kind of deployed in chat, I did what Todd did. I'd go in there and do some really nice prompting, give it context, and we're talking about large data sets. 50. Some of these were a couple 100,000 tags or alarms per month in the sets, and kind of breaking those up to where they make sense too. And prepping the data is important, but using that agent to learn, and say I did this process basically like once a month for the last 18 months, where we're rationalizing the alarms on a monthly. We make changes, and then we kind of collect data and go back again and make more changes. And what I find is a lot of times there's like whack-a-mole type things where you feel like you did pretty good rationalizing, and then maybe you forgot something, or maybe there was a change in the environment, the weather changed, and all of a sudden you got these moles popping up that you're whacking. But the AI agent itself, what does that mean?
Okay.
And why is it powerful? And why is it kind of the 2.0 for, this type of thing, industry?
Yeah, I'll touch on about 4 things, okay? So right now, what you just said was you lose a large language model, and then you create a GPT, a transformer, based on the data you've given it with your intervention, right?
Mhm.
That's really
Mhm.
what you did, right? So that right there is a GPT. The agent is a software or a system or a program that's designed to autonomously, without you, perform those tasks and make decisions
Right.
without you.
So right now, my agent, instead of having to go in here and prompt at the end of the month,
Yeah.
I go in there and basically hit go, and
You don't even
it
hit
does
go.
everything.
You don't with an
Yeah,
agent, you don't even have to hit go.
it's just the data's there.
Yeah, it's there. So think of these as agents. Number one, the core capabilities of an agent is it's autonomous. Okay.
Okay.
So it doesn't require your intervention of any kind because why? It's doing what is next, which is a perception. The perception is I'm collecting data from an API, I'm collecting data from a sensor, or I'm connected to a data source that's going to let the agent perceive information.
Okay.
So a good example is a product, a brand new, it's very hot right now, which is N8N. And so what N8N does is it allows you to create this agent. And with the agent, you're going to attach your large language model so that you can talk to it. Then it's going to allow you to attach what we call a brain. And in that brain, you can set memory to it. So you might use the regular standard Windows memory, or which it's gonna look at the last 10 or 30 interactions, but you can add additional memory. The other thing that you can add are APIs and connections to sensors and data.
Multiple, like
Multiple.
unlimited almost.
Yeah, almost unlimited. And the other thing, Jeff, is that once you do all of that and it interprets the data after with these connections, it can reason, and the AI agent will process the information, interpret it, and execute. Okay, so if I'm in the business, this might mean that I connect my phone and I have a voice agent, and I say, hey, contact Todd today and set up a meeting for 7 a.m. And let's see if I'm available, book it. If I'm not, don't book me, right? So an AI agent will reason with that and execute the decision, and it doesn't need you to do any more than that.
Yeah. So you brought something up here, Todd, on the screen. So
yeah. So even if you looked at that, you can see that agent has a connection or a chat, which is OpenAI. And then from there, we can add additional steps and data. It can pick up tools and connect them as an API to make decisions. And then finally, hey, I'm going to execute something, right? So my output, I'm going to do this. Now, I want you to understand something, or for anyone that's listening, there's also a difference between an agent and what's called an RPA, which is a robotic process automation, That's a tool like make.com. Those are things where I just wanted to execute a process. It's very linear. I do this, it does this, there's an outcome. With an agent now, it's going to reason and make a decision.
It's not dummy. It's not a dummy, right?
It also has goal-oriented behavior. So that's the fourth piece to this is it's goal-oriented. So it's going to want to achieve a goal. If Todd's calendar's looking full, it's going to look for the best possible time. And the agent can actually go back and say, I went ahead, instead of booking an appointment, I sent a text to Todd and said, Todd, can you cancel this appointment with so-and-so and put me in there? See?
Yeah.
And it did that without you. Now, so I hope that answers the question in terms of the power or the difference between an agent. You've got that GPT, which again, there's a small percentage in the US that are using it. It's available. But then you've got this AI agent emergence that's happening right now, and it's happening so fast.
Why is AI going to change the world? That's, I mean, I know my answer to that, but when you look at only 12% of people using it, and I think it's companies and industry that's going to implement AI, and I forget that saying. It's kind of bounced around in our industry. It's AI is not going to take over everybody's job. It's people that are using AI.
Right. Well, Todd, the reason, I think one of the reasons why the number looks low, because it's hard to correlate that, right? Like, what do you mean? Like, why is there such a small number? The reason is because AI and your ability to use something, even if it's just a GPT to begin with, or a large language model, is because the majority of the workforce is not a knowledge worker.
Yeah. And Todd, what I would say is this: everyone's using AI. They just don't know they're using it.
Right.
Because everything in their lives, if they use a phone, if they use the internet, if they connect to anything that has an IP address, there's probably a good chance at some point, somewhere, they're utilizing AI, or they went to the doctor who has a database that someone uses. Let's just say everyone's benefiting from it. But we're talking about the 12% of users who actually go to an application, a large language model with these capabilities that you showed in the Onion, and you're prompting things, you're making it. That's only 12% of the population.
Which is about 178 million, according to chat.
So it's a small number when you look at that.
And the people training AI agents, I'm assuming, is a very small subset of that 12% too.
Sure, absolutely. But keep in mind that if I'm deploying an AI agent, the agent's learning from another source, right?
Yeah.
So it can take on a model and learn from that. So it doesn't need you to keep feeding it. It just
right, which is kind of you guys probably heard about DeepSeek a lot, but the reason one of the major reasons they were more cost effective is because they used OpenAI's model to teach its model.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm sure chat was like, they're really upset that DeepSeek basically, so chat went and scraped the web to basically, they stole all their stuff, and it was supposed to be an open model, basically, right? And they published it, and then they kind of closed it and made it a subscription. But they basically went and penetrated the web to build their application and their
things like
their model.
Reddit, Wikipedia, all that type of stuff.
And then what did DeepSeek do? They say, well, let's not do that. Let's just go steal it from chat and go from there, right? So it's an interesting industry, and like I said, there's a lot of competitors in the space, and of course the race is data centers, power. How do all these things take a ton of energy to accomplish?
Well, and I am kind of meaningfully asking this question. When it comes to AI and OpSite energy, if you're talking about general users, it's 12%. What roughly percentage of control rooms around the world are using AI? And I think indirectly there might be a percentage, but overall, as a initiative or a technology push, I think it has to be extremely small right now.
Yeah, and I would say that anyone who's not exploring that as an option, they're definitely losing competitive advantage if they had any to start with. But it's the same thing as going back to our previous podcast, or maybe it was this one, I can't remember now, but where I talked about going through the data and doing my own learning, as a human, what we call human learning, and applying filters and things like that. Like that versus the power of what I've been able to do over the last 18 months for alarm rationalization on complex, very large, very, crazy data sets is like night and day.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you're not using this to manage that piece of your workflow, you're wasting a ton of time, and you're probably employing way more people than you need.
Now, one of the things I want to mention here is that, so first of all, you're not going to find me working for, Gemini or, Google or anybody like that. Number one, the hiring process is difficult. So number two,
too old too, man.
Well,
so.
Yeah, but I put myself in the category of what I call the AI generalist.
Right.
Okay. And what do I mean by that? Well, the AI generalist is someone who is leveraging AI capabilities in order to deliver a competitive advantage for my customers, for my employer, and for me. That's what I'm doing. So that's what the power is of the AI agent, of the AI generalist. So I'm not trying to be the next guy that discovers the next model. That's not it. But if I can provide the competitive advantage to my customer or my client, leveraging an AI tool, I will do it because it is there. And I think that when we look at that small number, let's go back to that 12% or whatever. The image I give, or the analogy I give all the time, is AI is when you go to the airport and you're going to miss your flight, but you get on those little escalators that make you walk along your journey and get you there a little bit faster. That is the that is the best way that you can leverage anybody in an organization and make them an AI generalist.
My analogy would be taking the vehicle in a car instead of the airplane, because the airplane is going to get you across country 100 times faster,
Yeah.
right? And I think AI gives people like you who know how to use it and effectively and to use different applications for different reasons or different applications, right? The generalist is a big deal, and like Todd mentioned, AI is not going to replace the workforce, but it may downsize it some, and the people that'll win will be people who know how to interact with it.
Yeah.